coming up.
This was the movie business. Kids killing their parents.
The murder case the whole world is talking about.
Neither were abused. They've made that up.
Why so many people now say the Menendez brothers
I hope they're gonna get out.
aren't villains, they're victims.
I believe Erik and Lyle Menendez.
Welcome to Extra Minutes, the 60 Minutes podcast. Now, we're going to be talking about the fascinating Menendez brothers murder case. If you haven't caught our story, you can always watch it on YouTube or 9Now. I'm Tara Brown. This is my colleague Serge Negus, our producer.
G'day,
Welcome
Tara.
to the podcast.
Thank you. It's nice to be doing it with you. Haven't done it with you before, so this is good.
I'm sure there'll be plenty more to come.
I imagine so.
Now, you brought this story to our program.
Which is funny because I'm so much younger than this story is. But basically, I was on social media and following some stories on there related to this case that just piqued my interest because I'd never heard of it before. And this was the first I was seeing it before, was on social media. And I asked my boss about it, and she was blown away that I was interested in this story because it was, 35 years old and I wasn't even born then. And that was really the instigator for it. And it's funnily the instigator for almost the entire case, in that there's been this reinvigoration of, sort of legal challenges that have been, pushed by this groundswell of social media interest in the Menendez case. So, it's a funny one.
What do you think it is that has sparked that interest at that social media level? Is it about ticking all of the boxes in terms of true crime?
I think so. And armchair detectives these days it's such a big thing, and so many people online like grabbing a hold of something that has a bit of mystery to it and just running with any potential lead there may be in it. If there's some sort of injustice, people get behind issues now online very, very hard. And so it just had all those boxes ticked for this story, especially because at the time that the boys went through their trial, the idea that two boys could be sexually abused by their father, culturally was just like no one believed it, particularly not men. Whereas now we've had a lot of change in society and those types of things are obviously known to be reality now. And so I think for a young audience, the idea that two young guys could have been sexually abused by their dad and ended up in jail for it forever, or for the rest of their lives, that there's some injustice in that, I think.
Yeah, I think also maybe the fact of where this happened. So Beverly Hills, very wealthy family, well-to-do, upstanding parents and kids, on the surface at least. For it to be so dark when you pull it apart is kind of intriguing, isn't it? It goes against type.
It really does. And I mean, that's what made it, one of the original sort of Hollywood trials, right? Like, it was broadcast around the world. I do think about that now though, and I wonder whether if something like that happened now, whether there would be as much interest or as much support for someone going through the same sort of thing, because I feel like there's a lot of hate among young people for a lot of celebrity too, and people in rich places as well. Like, we live in a very polarized world. Like, I'd be very interested to see a similar case in modern times. Not that I want one to happen, but, it'd be interesting to see how social media would react, I think.
Yeah. I mean, of course, it raises the question of the power of social media, and is that power earned? I mean, these are just people with opinions, and bias, as you've just described. People are anti-celebrity, they're anti-wealth. I mean, should those people have a say about the outcome in a legal case like this?
Well, totally. And I find it really concerning, like, as someone who's grown up with social media. And this is probably the first case where I've watched something like this happen online and gone, oh, this is actually interesting, and I want to pursue what these people are interested in and try and find what the real story is. But it genuinely concerns me, that side of things. And it's not the first case where TikTok or Instagram have gone gangbusters with something like this and really muddied the waters. And, there's some risk that they could create some sub-judice issues like down the line if they really go ham on that kind of thing. So I think it's something we need to be careful of, and how social media looks at these things.
Well, especially when politicians are at the top of the chains, and they're always going to be influenced by public opinion, aren't they?
Exactly, yeah.
And you have elected officials looking at the fate of these two brothers.
Yeah, and I mean, America and the system there, I mean, there's lots of stuff that we heard whilst looking at this story, Tara, where, people were saying to us that the reason that the district attorney sort of looked at resentencing, the Menendez brothers, was highly political and based on him trying to win votes, which is,
Didn't work.
It didn't work. No, he lost. But will be interesting to see whether the new DA actually follows suit or whether he does something entirely different. And I mean, I guess it's something that we don't see as much of here in Australia, that it becomes that heavily politicised, like in the court system. But yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
It is fascinating. So when your appetite was first whet, where did you go? Like, who did you call first?
It was funny. So I hit up this mate of mine who'd been posting about it, who lives in LA.
I just have to say, Serge, for all those people listening to you today, they won't know, but you know people all over the world. You have best mates in all places.
Luckily, yeah. No,
and they
good.
seem to be linked to all your stories.
Somehow, yeah. No, it's good to have contacts all over the globe. But yeah, so this mate of mine, Dan, he's an amazing guy. I actually used to work with him on the project many years ago when I was like a very young journalist. And he basically hit me up when I was talking about it with him and said, hey, look, there's this guy, Roy Rosello, who is from this 80s Latino boy band who could be a victim, another victim of the brother's dad, Jose. And he's like, I've been talking to him and you should try and talk to him and see if he'll talk to you guys. He's done a documentary over here, like airing his allegations. And so through my mate Dan, he put us in contact with Roy, but Roy essentially said that he had too many legal issues going on at the moment that were related to the case and the boy's potential freedom, and so he couldn't talk to us. But his story of abuse that goes from him being abused by the manager of his band, Menudo, in the 80s, to then him being essentially trafficked by his manager to Jose Menendez, was just mind-blowing to me, and it wasn't something that was being reported here in Australia much. And so that was what really got me engaged, that there was like another case and new evidence here that was worth us looking into more.
I mean, his allegations are yet to be tested, but that is what the Menendez defence lawyers want to do in what is called a habeas corpus petition, where they want their original murder sentence to be or conviction rather, to be overturned. But even though it hasn't been tested, he is compelling, isn't he?
He's very compelling. And I mean, here's a guy who was allegedly abused from, the age of 12, 13, but in this time where he was, a big pop star and a child. And so the power imbalance of what occurred to him is just so terrible. And he's gone on to become a priest, and he now helps people who've also been sexually abused as children. And so he's gone through this pathway, this journey to actually come to a point where he can actually talk about what happened to him. And he's finally doing that. And it's yet to see whether that will have an impact on the Menendez brothers case. But either way, his story is one that will really, tear you apart.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the significance of his allegation, according to the Menendez brothers' lawyers, is that here is an example, if the allegations are proven, that supports Erik and Lyle's position, that their father was a pedophile, that he was an abuser, and here is somebody who's making those allegations as well. According to the defence lawyers in those original trials, Jose Menendez was a model citizen. The concept or thought that he could ever abuse anyone was ruled out.
Yeah.
This changes that.
It does. It really does. But I guess what we found whilst doing the story, Tara, was that, that may not actually be the easiest way that the boys can get out of jail. And that even though it seems compelling, there is another avenue that the District Attorney of Los Angeles has put forward that is actually just more simply about how you do time in the States and whether or not they've done their time, essentially, and that these boys are, they've been, upstanding sort of prisoners, they've rehabilitated, and that there is a opportunity here to resentence them and get them out that way, and that's probably a quicker option, right?
Yes, I mean, that's right. In California, there is this option, and something like 300 prisoners have been released. Again, the Menendez brothers have been sent to jail for life, non-parole. This would actually overturn that, and given the time served, they'd be out of jail pending the parole board's decision. The people who are opposed to that raise how violent their crimes were. I mean, it was horrific what they did to them parents.
It was absolutely horrific.
So when you first started looking at this, was it a unanimous, a unified voice on social media about whether they should be let out or not?
It was It was like 95%, I would say. It was almost unanimous. And that came down to just the pure fact that I think there's a lot of education now for people around victims of domestic abuse and sexual abuse, the battered syndrome, that someone in those scenarios, particularly a child, the way they react to being abused or assaulted, can be extreme. And so I think the DA, obviously, he's taken that into consideration and says that they have rehabilitated, and the age they were when they did offend, they've developed and their brains have developed beyond that point, and that they're not likely to reoffend. And I think there's a compelling case for that. And a lot of the science and the psychological science around it these days really does show that there is reason to look at these guys now and say, they are okay, they're not going to reoffend.
It's certainly something that the extended Menendez family believes, and they've been very vocal and emotional about having these men now resentenced and allowed out. There is one family member who is opposed to that, who continues to believe that the sexual abuse allegations is a fabrication. If it's a fabrication, it's been a lie that they've lived with for a long time.
It has. I mean, and they've done it incredibly well if it is a lie. And I think, Robert Rand, who is one of the people who appears in our story, a journalist who's followed this for years, he said, he's been there from day one. He's interviewed them from before they were convicted and all of that sort of stuff. And he said that they're either the greatest actors and liars in the world, or they're telling the truth. And that's kind of where that argument sits. It's hard to how do you find that out? How do you tell that? But
they have lived their truth, haven't they, for 35 years? The programs that they've done in jail has not just helped themselves to rehabilitate, but they've worked to help others, and it's all been linked. They've done lots of courses and lots of different kind of avenues, but taken different kinds of avenues, but they have done so much to help others who have been victims of sexual abuse. They have lived that every day since they've been there. They
have, yeah. And I mean, I heard one of the brothers somewhere talk about how good prison has actually been for them, and that the scenario that they were living in with their parents was so bad that their life has been better in prison, which is just it's tragic if it's all true, but also tells you a lot about how they've been able to get to this point where resentencing and parole is considered because they've worked in prison. Yeah. They've done all this work both on themselves and on their own education and helping other prisoners. And so, I mean, there's a good set of reasons that you could release them on, I think, according to the justice system in the States.
That's fascinating. I mean, I think a couple of weeks ago, the thought was that they would be home for Christmas. That is now uncertain with the election of a new DA who wants to review all the material before making a decision. But the belief is that they will get out.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah. It sounds like it. It could be a few months, it could be 6 months, it could be more, but the general consensus is they will eventually be released. And I guess there's sort of those three different avenues that they can go down, which is this simple resentencing based on what the DA is recommending with them having spent their time. And then there's obviously the habeas petition, but then there's also clemency from the governor of California that is also still an option. So I think there's a very good chance that they will get out eventually.
Yeah. The governor can also say no to the parole board if the parole board says yes. But anyway, I mean, I think there are hurdles for them and perhaps more stories for us because these two brothers have married. They have lives to lead once they leave. They're now in their early to mid 50s. There is still life outside of life with no parole if that changes for them.
Yeah, definitely. You just wonder where they're going to go once they get out, if they do get out as well. I think it'll be a fascinating story once that happens. Are they going to go on I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here? Or have they made money investing? Have they made money investing, whilst in jail? I don't know. Who knows what they're going to do? They're obviously very smart guys, so there'll be a lot to come.
Yeah. Did you enjoy the shows around this, the documentaries, the Netflix drama?
Yeah. I definitely did. I particularly enjoyed there was the documentary that featured Ro Rosello and his case and Menudo and the band and the abuse occurring in that, just because it was just such a horrific example of, you know, a predator getting away with so much and so many people not raising red flags to it. And it just showed me how to be more aware and to, I guess, how society should not go about things in the future and make sure that we keep an eye out for these kinds of things because it can happen anywhere. So there was a lot of learning in that, I think. But yeah, it's amazing that how much has been done. It's everywhere.
Yeah, and that speaks to the fascination people have with it. And I think maybe because it's not so clear cut.
Yeah.
You know, when you watch those programs, 1 minute you're, you know, this is terrible, this is very obvious. Then there's another detail of how the brothers reacted, and that makes you question whether they're being totally honest or not.
Yeah.
It is a fascinating and circuitous kind of tale, isn't it? And
Absolutely.
And in a way, you almost forget that it's fact.
Yeah, totally. It just becomes another Hollywood production to a degree.
Yeah, but this one's an enduring one, and the ending is yet to be revealed. Thank you. Thanks for bringing it to the program.
No worries. Thanks for doing it for me. So thanks for doing the hard work.
You did lots of hard work. No, it was good. Great to work with you as always.
Thanks, Tara.
Thank you very much for watching. Remember, if you want to see that story, head to 9 Now or YouTube. Until next time.